My name is Del Bigtree. For about 6 years, I was a producer on the daytime talk show, The Doctors. I consider it to be one of the best medical talk shows in the world. While I worked on that show, I celebrated the best that medicine had to offer. Groundbreaking techniques, surgeons doing extraordinary feats, doctors coming up with amazing health ideas, and it was an amazing experience to work on that show. While working on that show, I also did difficult stories, corporate interest stories, Monsanto, GMO foods, pesticides, pollution, things that are affecting the health of children. These are stories that a lot of producers didn't want to touch, but to me, the show was about health. And luckily, the show always stood by me and allowed me to pursue the topics I wanted to pursue. While working on that show, I became aware in the fall of 2014 of the story that you just heard the Congressman talk about, a CDC whistleblower, a top scientist from the Centers for Disease Control, the most important health agency in the world, had come forward and was saying that they had committed what they believed to be fraud, that they manipulated data and thrown out important data on a study looking at the MMR vaccine and its connection to autism. Now, for me, that was probably the biggest story I could ever imagine. If it was true, we were in serious trouble. I began researching this story on my own, pursuing it where I could try and find, there wasn't a whole lot of detail on it. But as I did that investigation, I ended up meeting Andrew Wakefield, Dr. Andrew Wakefield. I did not realize that Dr. Andrew Wakefield had been working with Dr. Brian Hooker. Dr. Brian Hooker is the scientist who was contacted by the CDC whistleblower. The CDC whistleblower reached out to Dr. Hooker and began making confessions on the phone that he felt guilty about what he'd done and the information that he'd suppressed and that he couldn't live with it any longer. It was Andrew Wakefield's, by Andrew Wakefield's urging, Brian Hooker began recording telephone conversations with the CDC whistleblower, Dr. William Thompson. This was done in a legal manner. In California, you cannot record phone calls without telling the other party that you were recording it, but Dr. Brian Hooker drove up to Oregon 3 hours from his home every time he made the 4 phone calls, which we now have recordings of. Oregon is a one-party state. It allows him to record the phone call without the second party being aware of it. Dr. William Thompson also lives in Georgia. That too is a one-party state. So these are all legal recordings. They can be heard and witnessed in our film. It's part of the materials that we used to put this story together. When I met Dr. Andrew Wakefield, I was introduced to all of the data that Dr. William Thompson had provided. I didn't know if it was classified. I didn't know exactly yet how it had come about. And I watched a film and the documentary that Dr. Andrew Wakefield had been working on that laid out these data, explained through graphs and also through the voice recordings of Dr. Thompson what had taken place. Getting to look at the film and also the hard data, I realized I was looking at the most important story of my life. There's no doubt when you work in the medical field or you work in television or medical television as it works for me, that Dr. Andrew Wakefield is not someone you would normally align yourself with. I had to look into the claims that have been made against him to see if it was something that I wanted to be a part of. I'm not going to get into the background of Dr. Wakefield and what has taken place, but I will say I'm confident and I'm happy to have spent the last year of my life working with this very esteemed scientist. This story is so important. We have a major scientist from the CDC. He is saying that they are not doing these studies the way all of us believe they should be being done. Now, people will say, this conversation about vaccines and autism is over. It's been decided vaccines are safe. We all believe that. In medicine, in medical television, that was what we all believed. This is new information. Just like any case where we think it's been thrown away, if forensic evidence comes up or a new witness comes up, you have to look at that case again. And that's what we have here. What we have here is a witness, Dr. William Thompson, coming forward and saying that things have not happened the way we believe they had. These tests have not been done the way we believe they've been done. He's provided forensic evidence that these tests and much of this evidence never made it into the papers that we have been looking at. And you have to understand, this NMR autism study done in Atlanta by this group of scientists is the very study we point to when we say that vaccines are safe. So you just saw a congressman stand up before the Congress. That happened in the middle of working on this film in July of last year. This congressman has all of the data that you will see in our film. He also has he has done more extensive interviews than we've done in the recordings we have on the phone. And he too just risked his career because it is important to him, as it is important to me and everyone in this film, that we care for the health of our children in this country and in the world. And if these vaccines can be made safer, they must be made safer. It appears that we are short-circuiting real science to help corporations make greater profits. That's what this movie is about. This is not an anti-vaccine movie. This is a movie about making vaccines safer, about caring for the health of children. Autism is one of the worst epidemics we have ever seen. It is skyrocketing out of control. It is never talked about in our news. We've gone from 1 in 10,000 children suffering from autism in roughly 1970, 1980, depends on where you get your science, to now the CDC admits 1 in 68. A poll was done last year saying it looks more like 1 in 45. And when you talk to real specialists looking at this, they think it might be 1 in 25 children are being diagnosed with autism. That means we are going to have 100,000 children born this year with autism, roughly. We are filling cities with autism people that will grow up. It's going to tax our insurance system. It's going to cost us a fortune. And in the end, this is what our film is about. We want to bring truth. We want to bring justice, and we want to ask the right questions. We don't have the answers. That is up for the Congress to decide. They need to speak to William Thompson. What we're asking as journalists and as filmmakers is the questions. And if we cannot ask these questions, then we have to question the health of our democracy in America.